Recording in progress. Oh, I forgot to go live on this. Oh, well, too late. I'll post it later. Welcome back to Mindshift Monday, everybody.
Hey.
And there's Megan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
I'm really feeling this music. It's like really relaxing.
Yeah, right. I like it's good. Like this kind of music, whatever. Like, it's not a game show, but kind of.
Like
How would you describe our show?
relaxing. Yeah, like hanging
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, I like it too. Cool. Glad you dig it. So Mindshift Monday. When was the last time we did it? It's probably
It's been a while.
a couple
Yeah,
of
you
weeks,
did a
right?
couple without me.
Yeah, exactly. I had to get some stuff before I went traveling. So I'm like, I just did kind of what we did before with the costume changes and had to now that we did that, we were recording live every day, every morning. Yes. Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it has been a while. Yeah, because we did it right after that event, which is already like a month ago, which is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where has time gone?
Yeah, no kidding. Speaking of events, by the way, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, specifically ladies that are moms, it is Mother's Day week, and we're putting on the first ever Modern Mom event, MME, first annual, because it'll be a repetitive, repetitive event that we'll do every year. And so, Megan, let's fill everybody in on what some of the content is, specifically from your end. What are you going to be bringing to the table of the Modern Mom event?
Yeah, so specifically from my end, I'm going to talk like just briefly about my journey with motherhood and how I've had to really shift my expectations and create a life that was way more in alignment with my core values. So if you're there in person, I'm going to be doing some core value exercises with you guys to really kind of delineate what's important to you and then how we're going to invest your time in that. Because when we invest our time in things that are most important, we're the happiest, right? Never mind, my
Totally.
house falling down right now. Sorry.
You got the blurred background, so I'm like, I can hear stuff, but
Like stuff
as far
that's
as I can
going
tell, the
on.
pictures are on the wall still.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And then of course I'll be bringing the usual like inner dialogue and like language work and so forth, because that can apply to pretty much anything and anybody. So we're going to be doing
Totally.
it. Yeah.
I
Right.
think
So
it's
we're
so important, that piece of it, because, for me, like in my journey, my inner dialogue was probably one of the most like just like the hardest thing that I had to do the work on. I can't
is
say
that
that
right?
from but
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so you would think that because it's your own narrative, it might be the easiest to change, but my experience was different. It was the hardest to change.
I could see that. I can see that. Well, especially because we know some about your backstory now from previous episodes. I mean, knowing you, obviously, it's like you had fairly safe to say, and correct me if I'm not using the wrong words, but like you're a lot more rigid with your expectations, your
Yeah.
vision. You had, okay, this is what I want it to be. And if it gets off base a little bit, you start getting frustrated, right? Whereas now
Mhm.
you've really learned okay, you can get to from point A to point B, but you got to be flexible at the same time, right? So, which
Yeah.
is, yeah, for sure. So I could see where your inner dialogue would have been challenged, because it basically right off the bat, because you said the way that your daughters were born, and there's a lot of different
Mhm.
things around right from the beginning of it, right? That was like
Mhm.
broke your expectation of it, right? So yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Interesting. Well, Mindshift Monday, I got an idea right off the bat because you kind of mentioned it. So we're going to be doing like mom theme kind of leading up to this event, and it is Mother's Day coming up this weekend at the time of recording. So yeah, let's get into like some mind shifts. Let's get right into that. What types of steps did you take personally in your story to be able to get to that stage where you could shift your mind to allow yourself the flexibility to step outside of this expectation or these different things
Mhm.
that you had in your life that weren't going your way? What kind of things were
Yeah.
you?
So I think one of the biggest things that I started with was schedules and being flexible around schedules, really like shifting my mind around what it meant to be on schedule versus off schedule. Because before I had kids, I was somebody that did really well with the schedule. And that's just how I functioned. And it brought me clarity and comfort to be on schedule. But kids don't really care about your schedule.
Yeah.
And so I had to shift my mind around this idea that if my kids were on a very rigid schedule, that meant that I was being a good mom or parenting in a
Mm,
way that was accepted by society, as opposed to I shifted it to just more so meet my kids where they were at and adjust to their needs. kids go through different developmental stages. They go through things called leaps, and then they regress a little bit and don't sleep as well, or maybe get cranky, or they don't want to eat. And when I was able to shift my mind around saying, okay, this isn't about a schedule, it's about meeting my kids where they're at, a lot of that frustration left.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. And that's something I would imagine you had to practice, right? It isn't something that came naturally. Yeah,
No,
it's
not for
yeah,
me at least. Yeah, no, not
right.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then what are the steps for that? Like if it's not something that it comes naturally,
Mhm.
yeah, I imagine you have to kind of walk into that. That's not something you're just gonna just like that.
Mhm.
Okay, you know what? Boom, done. Like
Yeah, I'm
what
just
could
not
you
gonna be frustrated,
yeah,
right?
right.
Yeah, I
Yeah, yeah.
wish.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I just
Yeah.
started off really small, and so I picked a time of day that seemed to be easiest for me. So in the beginning, mornings seemed to be easiest because they were a bit slower.
Mm,
And so if I needed to adjust the schedule, because I was home, I was on maternity leave, it was easier for me to do that in the morning. And I had to have plan A and plan B in my mind
mm,
because that worked best for me and in my coping skills. I needed to know that I had a plan B. I didn't always have to use it, but when I started doing my own counseling, I was able to talk through worst case scenario and what that would look like and how am I going to cope with it.
mm.
So just starting with some really basic coping skills if things don't go to plan was helpful for me. So then I was able to shift my mind when things didn't go to plan. Nap time didn't roll out as planned, or the meal that I made for them they didn't want to eat. What was I going to do?
Right. Yeah,
I
exactly.
had a bit of a safety plan.
Yeah, you're like, 6-month-olds don't like the dinner. You're like, you know how long it took me to, like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
Right?
I
It's
was
like,
gonna say, yours was
okay, on to the next thing, I guess, right?
yeah.
Yeah, you can't guilt trip a 6-month-old, I wouldn't assume.
No, and
They don't.
so, in regards to eating specifically, my backup plan was actually inner dialogue work. It was around
Mm.
reminding myself that children are very intuitive. They will eat when they're hungry. They're not gonna
Ooh,
starve themselves because in that
yeah,
phase of life, that's all they're functioning off of is
sure.
intuition. They're still very
Yeah.
primal. They eat when they wanna eat, they sleep when they wanna sleep. So I
Mm.
had to practice an inner dialogue around, "It's not something I'm doing wrong. It's not that I've made them a meal that they genuinely don't like," because a six-month-old doesn't know what they like. They don't even have their taste buds to really know
Oh,
what they like.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
And they will eat when they're hungry, and I had to practice that mantra in moments of frustration. They will eat when they're hungry. They will show me when they're hungry, and if this isn't
Mm.
the moment because I planned lunch at noon, it's
Mm.
okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. So what other okay, so you got mantras. What other kinds of specific coping skills or mechanisms were you using at that time?
Mhm. Yeah, so I talk about stop and pause a lot.
Mm,
And I don't think I really coined the phrase, but I say it a lot. And so, in moments of frustration or in moments of the schedule not going to plan, I told myself that being able to stop and pause was much more imperative than me pushing the schedule because the stop
mm.
and pause allowed me to take a step back. It didn't always mean that I was fully removing myself because how far can you remove yourself from a baby?
Yeah.
You have to kinda, like, stay
Yeah.
in the room, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But,
I'm removing myself
to
3 feet.
to regulate.
Mm.
I had to take a moment
Yeah.
to regulate and
Yeah.
stop forcing the schedule, and so all day long, I would say to myself again, like, kind of inner narrative, like, "It's time to stop and pause." So I would
Yes.
take some deep
Yes.
breaths. Sometimes I would, like, physically kind of back up from the situation and just sort
Mm.
of, like, um, take a moment, whether I put my kids in the cribs and just kind of regulated, because I found that the more I resisted and pushed or tried to force, the more frustrated I just got, and the more my anxiety rose.
Right. That's a key. That that's going to be what we're going to go into Toastmaster Tuesday with. I'm going to get you to do I will increase it because I'm not going to actually be doing a speech this time because I'm putting you on the spot, member.
Oh, it's
So
just me.
so it's
Okay.
just gonna be you. I mean, I could, but it's gonna be funner for for just you to have to do it.
Yeah, sure.
For
Funner.
me, yeah. So what we'll do is we'll take the idea of allowance or acceptance versus resistance and how you developed that that dual or like how you balanced that duality and how that's matured within you and specifically as being a parent. Does that work for you?
Yeah, for
That
sure.
give you enough to go off of? Okay, cool. So great stuff. Yeah, just learning, relearning, or would relearning be this? Anyways, like getting into scheduling, being flexible with schedule versus rigid, shifting and adjusting, having a plan B, stop and pause, regulating yourself, mantras. Basically,
Mm.
those are all like the tools of the trade, so to speak. That would be your
Yeah, and
yeah.
definitely core values because sometimes I
Yes.
didn't really realize like what was triggering me. Why was I becoming so frustrated just because bedtime wasn't going to plan? And I even had people like my husband just kind of be like, well, like, what is the big deal? Like, I don't understand why you're going from 0 to 60 just because bedtime is pushed back, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But for me, I have a core value of like solitude and alone
Mm.
time.
Yeah.
I need that. And
Yeah.
so a stall on bedtime meant that was cutting into time for myself.
Right.
So that was the trigger. And so when I was able
Mm.
to intentionally carve out alone time, not just at bedtime, but even when my children were still awake, whether that meant like getting help or, my husband was going to spend time with them so I could have time for myself,
Gotcha.
that allowed me to be more flexible because it wasn't just the only time that I was going to get that core need met.
Right. Okay. And then therein lies like the plan B, right? Coming up with like it doesn't just have to be this to this. There's going to be exactly. So that's within flexibility is other plans. And yeah, okay. That's cool. That makes sense. Excellent. I love it. So that's Mind Shift Monday, everybody. We'll be coming back at you tomorrow with Toastmaster Tuesday, where I put Megan on the spot yet again with the topic of allowance or acceptance versus resistance and how she developed that in her motherhood. So this is Mom's Week, heading into Mother's Day. Thanks for joining, and we will see you tomorrow.
See ya.